of God our Father and our living Good Shepherd Jesus. Today I'd like to finish the sermon series I've been doing on the 23rd Psalm. Today we finish with Psalm 23, verse 6, and that verse reads as follows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This is the text. My dear friends in the faith, question. Do you have, or have you ever had, a dog? Some of you may own a dog right now. A lot of you probably know and remember, I used to have a dog. My little dog's name was Farley. I had Farley for 17 years, a little Shih Tzu Pomeranian blend. And for a small dog, 17 years is quite a long life. Farley's been gone now for a little over a year, and while I miss him, I don't miss the routine. A lot of people came and went in my life, and I have not heard from them in years, if ever again, but Farley was always there. Although I don't feel totally dogless, so to speak, I kind of have a surrogate dog. It's kind of a strange relationship. It's actually not my dog. The dog belongs to my future sister-in-law, Shelley, and she lives up in Memphis. Now, her dog's name, the name, is Maxine. But, in my infinite, strange wisdom, I renamed the dog. The dog's name is now Space Dog. I don't know why I called Maxine Space Dog, but now I do. And the name somehow stuck, and now Maxine is colloquially known in the Angley family as Space Dog. Someday I hope to have a dog again, because, hey, I'm a dog person. Now, maybe you're not. Maybe you're a cat person. that can be a different sermon for a different day. You know, King David, when he was thinking about dogs, let's not forget, King David, before he was King David, he was also Shepherd David. Let's not forget that. And a good shepherd knew how valuable a good sheepdog was. The sheepdogs were very valuable, very important. I mean, sheepdogs were there to lead and guide the flock, and they were there to, if members of the flock would wander away, the sheepdog could bring them back. Sheepdogs were even there to help defend the flock against those who would bring harm. Wolves, bears, thieves, robbers. Anybody who would want to harm the flock, they had to get past the sheepdog. Now I know what you're thinking. You're sitting there thinking to yourself, Pastor, you're already 3 minutes into the sermon, and I already know there's nothing in the 23rd Psalm about dogs. My first question is, why are you keeping track of the time of the sermon? I'll keep track. The second thing is, actually, I think there is a reference to dogs. I think there is a reference to dogs in the 23rd Psalm. And if you are a dog person like myself, or if you've ever owned a dog, a good dog, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. And the reference to dogs is found in Psalm 23, verse 6. Surely goodness and mercy. Goodness and mercy. They're going to follow us all the days of our lives. I don't know about you, but to me, that sounds like the behavior of a very, very, very good dog. And that's why I refer to goodness and mercy as the Hounds of Heaven. The Hounds of Heaven. Because goodness and mercy will follow us all the days of our life. All of my days? Yeah. That kind of consistency, that kind of faithfulness, that kind of love, that kind of devotion, it reminds us of a good and faithful dog. A dog that is always there, always happy to see us, always a joy to be around. That's the way goodness and mercy are in our life. Goodness and mercy are always there. Now I get it. That's easy to say when life is easy. And right now, let's face it, for you, life is pretty easy. In this moment. Yes, I know you're sitting in a wooden pew. Well, this is not some log you just rolled up to a stump. It's cut so that you have a little bit of lower lumbar support. You have a pew cushion in there so your butt doesn't get too tired. You're in a climate-controlled room. The windows are sealed. There's no bugs or snakes up in here. This is a very, very comfortable place to be. And if you're watching us on Facebook, they probably still have their robes on and their feet up on a coffee table and they're drinking a cup of hot chocolate or something. Right now, life is very, very easy. I get that. It's easy to say, goodness and mercy are part of my life when your national and personal health is just fine. No medical problems, no COVID, nothing to worry about. It's all good. It's easy to say, goodness and mercy are always with us when staffing and supply are never a problem. Nothing is ever on back order. Every business is open whenever they need to be because they have more than enough employees. It's easy to say that goodness and mercy are always there, and everybody in your family is doing great. Confidence abounds because your life feels like it's perpetually filled with goodness and mercy, and that's awesome. But then what happens when life changes? Are you still so eager to say, oh yeah, goodness and mercy, they're a part of my life? You still feel that way when, especially when your personal health is in the dumpster? I've been there. It doesn't feel good. And here we are, way more than a year into COVID-19. People are still wearing masks. They're still protecting themselves. People are still dying every day. Yeah, when our health goes up underneath us, to talk about God's goodness and mercy, not quite so easy. Now this weekend here at Good Shepherd, let's face it, we're not a mega congregation of 3,000 members. And this weekend, we're not saying goodbye to one, but two of our members. Two in the same weekend. That's never happened in the entire time I've been here. In 7 years, we've never done two memorial services on the same weekend. It's happening today. Or what happens to you when you feel like your whole world has been taken away from you? Maybe not literally everything, but you feel a little bit like old-timing Old Testament Job. Because Job, well, that's a guy that lost it all. He lost his house, he lost his kids, he lost his servants, he lost his livelihood, he lost his comfort, he lost his personal health, and his wife's response was, well, why don't you just curse God and die? Thanks, honey, thanks a lot. What do you do when your life falls apart? Can you still say with any degree of certainty and confidence that God's goodness and mercy are still there? Do you confidently believe that God's goodness and mercy are there even when it feels like your life is falling apart and there's no reason left to even get up in the morning? The answer is absolutely. Absolutely. Goodness and mercy will follow you all the days of your life. Now, when I was a kid growing up in Lincoln, Nebraska, this was back way before cable television, way before satellite television. This is back in the days when you only had like 4 or 5 channels to choose from. And I can remember the impact of a miniseries one year called Roots. And maybe a lot of you saw that also. It was very, very popular. It was about a man born in Ghana back in about the year 1750. The man's name was Kunta Kinte. And when he was 17, or in 1767, he went to the local village looking to buy or find some wood. He was building a drum for his brother. All of a sudden, he was surrounded by 4 guys. And the 4 guys grabbed him, subdued him, they bound him up, and they threw him in the bottom of a slave ship. And eventually that ship made a crossing from Africa to North America. It took 4 months to get there. Can you imagine how awful those travel conditions would have been? Then I'm not talking about, oh no, there's no more popcorn sundaes on my cruise. No, no, this is extremely bad. And yet, Kunta Kinte made it. He was sold to a plantation owner in Virginia, and this might strike you as a shock. Kunta Kinte didn't want to be a slave. Imagine that. And so he ran away. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times. 4 times Kunta Kinte ran away. They found him all 4 times. What? How on earth did they find someone who had run away 4 times? This is back way before GPS. This is back before helicopters. This is back before modern technology. How do you find one person who runs away 4 different times? And the answer is bloodhounds. They use dogs. They let dogs get a scent of his clothing to smell what Kunta Kinte smelled like, and they just told the dogs, go find that smell, and off they went. And they did not stop, they would not stop, they kept on chasing, they kept on pursuing until they found him. Now, I'll tell you this much, when they found Kunta Kinte for the 4th time, the slave owner didn't want to run away anymore, so he gave Kunta Kinte one of 2 choices. How do I say this in mixed company? Let's just say option number 1, very, very bad. Which is why I didn't go for that option. Option 2, cut off the front half of his right foot. That was the better of the 2 options. Now today, I don't watch Roots anymore. It hasn't been on television for a long time. But I do watch a show called To Catch a Smuggler. Maybe you've seen this. It's about dogs and other techniques they use in a lot of major international airports like Atlanta, Miami, New York, Los Angeles. And dogs smell people, luggage, packages. What are they looking for? They're trained to smell narcotics. They're trained to smell certain agricultural products. I mean, shoot. Even up the road at Southeastern Guide Dogs, they train dogs to smell COVID. That's pretty cool. Dogs can do amazing things when they pick up on the right scent. Bob, someone's trying to get in. The door's open. Okay, now look, here's the thing about Roots. Because it was so popular, a lot of questions were asked about it, and there was some doubt about how truthful things were, and the author said some of it was actual family history, some of it was made up, some was a little bit embellished. So look, I'm not here to talk about that. I don't want to talk about what part of Roots were true or not. That's not what's important. What's important to talk about is how relentless dogs can be when it comes to pursuing. They don't stop. They don't quit. Once they pick up that scent, they will chase until they themselves are lost, or they themselves are in danger. They will continue to pursue, and they just will not quit. A hound dog, a bloodhound, they will risk themselves in order to do what they're trained to do. They will risk their own well-being to do what they are there to do. Now, that's what David is trying to convey when he's talking about what I call the hounds of heaven. Goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And this should be an eye-opener for you. This should open your eyes to a very, very important truth. God's goodness and God's mercy are with us no matter where you go and no matter what you do. It doesn't matter whether your life is up or down, you feel like it's all around. God's goodness and mercy are always with you. As a matter of fact, here it comes, it always has been. It always has been. If you're not sure, read the Bible. All right, that's a bit ambitious. Let me summarize for you. Adam and Eve. God gave Adam and Eve one rule only. Don't eat fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. What did Adam and Eve do? They ate fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so God had to kick them out of the Garden of Eden. But he didn't just leave them out there abandoned. He watched over them. He protected them as they began the process of populating the earth. How about a guy like Moses? Moses goes down to Egypt. Let my people go. I don't think so, but eventually after the 10th plague, he leads the entire Israelite nation, probably 1 million strong. He leads them out in the Sinai Peninsula. They go to Mount Sinai. They go up onto the mountaintop. God gives Moses the 10 Commandments. Moses comes down. The people are already breaking the first commandment. That didn't take long. And when they didn't trust God's promise that they will take the promised land, because the people there were just too tough, they had to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. That was their punishment. 40 years. But do you know the rest of the story? What did God do? For 40 years, every morning, He gave them food. Gave them manna. When they got sick of manna, He gave them quail. He provided fresh water. He gave them clothes that didn't wear out. He gave them shoes that didn't wear out. There's not exactly a super Walmart out in the middle of nowhere. He protected them for 40 years. God's goodness and mercy were the nation of 1 million people for 40 years? Don't you think He can hang with you for a few? How about the disciples? Boy, if you could ever ask the disciples a question or hear a story from them, man, they'll talk about God's goodness and mercy. But the one that I want to talk to the most is sort of the leader of the disciples, Peter. I call him the grand poobah of the disciples. He's the leader of the inner circle. He's the de facto leader of the disciples. And yet, after Jesus is arrested and taken away, Peter tries to keep a low profile, but somebody spots him. Hey, you were with that Galilean. Remember what Peter does? He denies even knowing Jesus, and he even swears an oath, I don't know the man, and he does that a total 3 times. 3 times. But you know what I think is so beautiful about God's goodness and mercy? After the resurrection, the resurrected Jesus comes, He finds Peter, He sits down with Peter, and He restores Peter back into ministry, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Pretty cool. How about the Apostle John? John, we're sick of listening to you. You won't stop talking about this Jesus guy. Go live your life on Patmos Island. That's the last we've heard of him. Well, except God had one more book to give him. It's called the Book of Revelation. That kind of changed things a bit. Then there's our old buddy Saul. Well, you probably know him better as Paul. A man who used to be a great persecutor of the church. God's goodness and mercy turned him into, by far, the greatest evangelist the Christian church will ever know. Billy Graham is a distant second. Paul experienced God's goodness and mercy and literally changed the world. All of these godly people can tell you about how prevalent God's goodness and mercy was in their lives. And here's the thing, I bet you can too. No matter how sad you might be, no matter how screwed up things might be, no matter how sick you are of stuff being on back order, no matter how many times you're tired of the fact your favorite restaurant is now closed half the time because they don't have enough people working, yet you can still reflect on how God's goodness and mercy has always been there. The hounds of heaven, goodness and mercy, are always there to follow you. Now,